Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Philip. Today we are continuing our conversation about the book, The Practice of Feeling at Ease. You don't have to live up to other people's expectations, written by the Japanese philosopher and psychological counselor Ichiro Kishimi. He is also one of the authors of The Courage to be Disliked, and his core ideas are deeply influenced by the psychologist Alfred Adler. Adler once said something very powerful. We are not disturbed by events themselves, but by the meaning we give them. At first, that sounds like a simple motivational quote, but if you really sit with it, it's actually radical. It means your emotional experience of life is not determined by what happened to you, but by how you interpret what happened. Your inner world, your interpretation system, shape your reality more than the outside world does. Today, we are diving deeper into a core theme from Chapter 2, the fragile superiority of people who feel they must be special. In Chapter 1, focus on how our personality is shaped by childhood experience and how we develop certain life strategies to survive. Then Chapter 2 asks a different question. What happens when someone grows up believing they must be special in order to have value? This chapter describes a psychological pattern, almost like a symptom that comes from living in constant comparison and constant self-justification. Kishimi points out something paradoxical but very real. The people who seem to work the hardest to prove they are outstanding, unique, or better than others are often the most insecure inside. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to show off. It doesn't need to keep saying, "Look how great I am." When someone constantly emphasizes how different or superior they are, it often means they are deeply anxious. Why? Because that sense of superiority is built on comparison, and anything built on comparison is fragile. There will always be someone more talented, more successful, more attractive, more visible. If your life is a ranking competition, you will never truly relax. The book uses the image of someone walking on a tightrope. They have to keep perfect balance all the time. They can't afford mistakes. They can't fall. In their subconscious mind, ordinary means worthless, so they hide their weakness. They avoid saying, "I don't know." They are afraid to admit failure. Life becomes a performance. The people around them are no longer partners, but an audience, judge, or even potential rival. Over time, that kind of life is exhausting. There's another type of person who works extremely hard, but their motivation is not love or passion, it's fear. They achieve because they want approval, they want praise, they want proof that they deserve to exist. If no one notices their effort, they feel empty or even angry. According to Adler, this is what he called a superiority complex. But here's the twist. A superiority complex is actually the flip side of an inferiority complex. Deep down, the person feels not good enough, so they try to become special to cover up that insecurity. The drive to stand out is often a compensation strategy. And here's something even more interesting. If someone can't become special through achievement, they might protect themselves in a different way. By not trying at all. Imagine a very smart student who doesn't study for an exam and then say, "I just didn't try. If I had tried, I would have gotten first place." What's the logic? It's simple. If they try their best and only get 60, that means maybe their ability is only 60. But if they don't try and still get 60, they can tell themselves, "That's not my real level." By not acting, they protect the fantasy of being 100. This is self-protection. It's also a fear of being ordinary. There's an even subtler version of this pattern that Adler described as showing off one's misfortune. Some people don't have big achievements, so instead they constantly highlight their trauma, their pain, their unfair past. Their suffering becomes their identity. If they can't be special because of success, they will be special because of how uniquely unfortunate they are. Through sympathy, they gain a sense of importance and control. This is not about blaming anyone, it's about awareness. Sometimes we hold onto our wounds not only because they hurt, but because they are one of the few places where we feel unique. So, how can we apply all this in our own lives? The first practice I call taking off the makeup. When you feel the urge to exaggerate your achievement, it's a social situation. Or when you are afraid to admit you don't understand something in a professional setting, try being honest. Say, "I'm not sure. Could you explain it to me?" You might think the world will collapse, but most of the time it doesn't. In fact, people may trust you more. Admitting you are ordinary doesn't make you smaller, it makes you real. The second practice is learning to distinguish between healthy effort and compensatory effort. Before you start working on something, ask yourself, am I doing this because I love it or because I'm afraid of being looked down on? Effort itself is not a problem. The question is whether you treat effort as a condition for your worth. When effort comes from contribution instead of self-proof, it feels lighter. It's no longer tight and desperate. The third practice is breaking the fantasy of potential. If you notice that you procrastinate or avoid challenge, remind yourself of this sentence. A failed reality is more valuable than a perfect fantasy. A version of you who tried and got succeed is more real and more courageous than a version of you who did nothing but imagine getting 100. Growth comes from facing reality, not protecting illusion. The fourth practice is what Adler called separating tasks. Other people's expectations are their task. Your life is your task. When you feel guilty for not meeting everyone's expectation, tell yourself, I'm not here to satisfy all people. This is not coldness, it's boundary. Only when you start carrying everyone else's responsibility can you truly take responsibility for your own life. At this point, I want to share a few well-known examples of people who struggle between inferiority and superiority, but gradually shift their direction through awareness. The first is Elon Musk. In his early career, he was known for being intense, controlling, and often in conflict with partners. Looking back at his childhood in South Africa, he experienced severe bullying and had a complicated relationship with his father. That early sense of powerlessness and humiliation may have transformed into an extreme need for control and a strong drive to prove himself as the smartest and most capable person in the room. But after facing multiple near bankruptcy with his company, he gradually shifted focus from personal heroism to larger mission, sustainable energy, space exploration, long-term survival of humanity. When the focus moved from I must prove I'm the best to I want to contribute to something bigger, the energy changed. Adler called this shift social interest. The idea that truly psychological health comes from contributing to the community. And finally, here's Alfred Adler himself. As a child, he was physically weak and often compared himself to his healthier older brother. He felt strong inferiority When he was young, he also tried to compete and win to cover that insecurity. But over time, he realized that true strength wasn't about defeating others, it was about helping others. He transformed his feeling of inferiority into motivation to study medicine and psychology, eventually becoming one of the major figures in modern psychology. This story shares a common thread. They all move from I need to win to I want to contribute. When the center of your life shifts from comparison to connection, you don't need superiority anymore. Your existence already has value. So, as we close today's episode, I want to gently challenge the belief that you must be special in order to be loved. Maybe you don't need to be brightest or the most outstanding person in the room. Maybe you just need to be yourself, honest, imperfect, human. When you put down the heavy armor of constant proving, you may discover that real confidence is not loud, it's calm, it's the quiet strength of standing in the world, even as an ordinary person and feeling at ease. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Philip, and I will see you next time.